Hello everyone! Instead of a Brawny's great video game playthrough today, I thought I'd do something a little bit different. Which, assuming you've already read the title of the video, you know. I was lucky enough to get myself a mini SNES at launch. And yes, I know launch was almost a year ago now, but hey, I've been busy. And since it's back available again, I thought this was a good time to do this video. So I wanted to give you a quick rundown of the games on it and what I think of each one. I mean, there's loads of stone cold classics on this, so what, you reckon less than a minute each? Let's go! And we start with a game that I've never owned. I seem to remember that I've played it once or twice in the past, but it's got no particular attachment to me. This is good, it means I can approach it as a brand new player and see how it holds up today. So let's press start and give it a go. Well, the controls are nice and tight, the gameplay is simplistic, yet fun. I can see why this is a popular choice whenever people are talking about older... Oh, I died. I must not have been paying attention. Try again. This time giving much more consideration to the bullets firing towards me and making sure I take care of everyone, and oh my god, the enemies just respawn all the damn time. Why won't anything in this game stay dead? Except me, apparently. It's a disappointment, really. I know that many people talk about Contra 3 purely because it is a hard game, and I'd hoped to come up with some other insight about it. However, I can't, because it's so bloody hard that I can't get any further. I advance microscopically further each time I play, and then die again. Although it does keep me coming back, so that's a positive, I guess. I will confess this is one of my favourite games ever made. I can't even pretend that this is a review to see how well it holds up, as I play it at least once every couple of years, so I know damn well how good it is. But why is it so good? Broadly speaking, it's the pitch-perfect platforming that really makes this a brilliant game for me. The use of Donkey and Diddy as a pair, acting as both a visible health bar and also having their own quirks and abilities was something I'd never encountered before with a platformer, and everything about the gameplay is finely tuned and, well, perfect. It's also a gorgeous game, and the visual style really set it apart from other games of the time, and has also helped it maintain a beautiful aesthetic ever since. And as far as the music goes, well, it's some of the catchiest you've ever heard. Just listen to it. There is no question in my mind that if you own a mini SNES, this should be one of the first games you fire up, as it is one of the best games you'll ever play. And that, my friend, is a fact. When I first saw the lineup of games, I was a little worried about the number of RPGs involved, as they aren't my first choice in any list of games. However, as the first RPG on the list, I found Earthbound to be a lot of fun. It's nice to be presented with a more modern day setting rather than a generic fantasy land, and with the introduction of aliens, meteorites, time travel and a bee that foretells the future, Earthbound does more than enough to stand alone. The mechanics are good, although I'm still one of those people who just hammers the attack button every time you're on the battle screen, and I thought the way it taught you how to play the game was really well paced. I like the aesthetic of it as well. I know it's considered a classic game and it's one I've never touched, but I can see why people like it so much. It's aged well, and the fact that you can name 4 people and a dog, and specify other details like favourite food, are brilliant little details that really pull you into the game that little bit more. Definitely going to keep playing this one. From an RPG I was surprised that I enjoyed, to an RPG that well, let's just say it didn't really float my boat. I did not enjoy the little I played of this game. Wait, before you get the pitchforks out, can I give you my reasons? I know that this game is widely considered to be one of the best Final Fantasy games and one of the best RPGs around, but for some reason it just didn't grip me. Maybe it's one of those games where once you've played the first few hours, then all of a sudden it becomes one of the best experiences of your life. But for me, who in all honesty played about half an hour, died and totally forgot to save, it just didn't grip me in any way, shape or form. I get that the story was trying to just drop me into a world, which is a trope I usually love in fiction, but I didn't really give a shit about anything that was going on. And with the opening being very brown and grey, it wasn't particularly visually exciting either. And the turn-based battles, oh dear. Look, turn-based combat is not normally a thing I enjoy, apart from Worms when it's hilariously fun, and I know it's a traditional RPG mechanic and a lot of people love it, but for me it just rips me out of the game completely. And that, I think, is because I was raised on action games, platformers, beat-em-ups. The fact that you have to choose what you're doing and then wait for it to happen, I just find tedious. And especially in this game where it gives you no idea of which attacks do what. I tried using different ones in battles, but they all seem to have much the same effect. so I ended up just spamming the same button over and over again. I'm not saying the game is terrible, it was always going to be a tough battle for me to enjoy it because I don't love RPGs. But I'm sorry, Final Fantasy III, you're unlikely to get much more in the way of playtime. Now, this is more like it. I remember absolutely loving this game when I was younger, so I can't wait to fire it up and... oh. It doesn't quite have the sense of speed I remember. I mean, I know I've been spoilt recently by playing fast RMX on the Switch, but this isn't... I mean, it's just... Look, I'll say it, it's nowhere near as good as I remember. For the first time on this console, I find myself disappointed by a game I remember loving. And that worries me. I mean, I play a lot of retro games and I enjoy many of them, but what if lots of the other games on this mini SNES are just as disappointing? I played F-Zero for a bit, hoping that my impressions would improve. And I can't deny the game's got a little bit of an entertainment value, but it's not going to be high on my list to play again, sadly. And now it's time to get a confession out of the way. Although I'm a massive Nintendo fan, I am not a Kirby guy. Never have been, in fact. It's possible that I've never given the little pink puffball a fair try, but I will confess my heart sank when I saw that Kirby Superstar is a compilation of Kirby games. 7 of the bloody things. And therefore I had intended to try them all, I really had, but I failed. It turns out you have to finish some games in order to unlock more, and my patience for tedious pink gameplay only lasts so long. I did try the following. Spring Breeze, a cute little platformer based on Kirby's Adventure. It's fine, but didn't exactly hold my interest. It was still the best of the bunch. Dynablade, strange and quite rubbish. The Great Cave Offensive, dull, 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 dull. Samurai Kirby, a minigame that's fun for a whole 5 seconds. And Megaton Punch, which is the same game as Samurai Kirby, essentially. Look, there's not much more to say on this. I'm not going to be playing this anytime soon. And now, I've expressed my opinion on Kirby already, and there's another one, and this is Kirby, a thing I hate, combined with golf. Have I ever pointed out that I hate golf? Even in video game form, it is something I tend to avoid. Although I do remember playing Putt and Putter on the Game Gear when I was younger, and weirdly loving it. But not this. Kirby Golf? No thank you. You're waiting for me to deride this popular famous RPG, aren't you? I've already complained about RPGs twice, and therefore this one will be another instance of me complaining, right? Well, you are wrong! I love this game. I've always loved this game, but I have a tough time telling you why I like this, but dislike other RPGs. The one obvious difference is that this is an action RPG, so battles are not the monotonous turn-based disasters that they are in more traditional RPGs. So whereas in Final Fantasy III, I was moaning about the turn-based combat, the action in Link to the Past is very much more up my alley, and the story is much more intriguing than Final Fantasy III. Not as intriguing as Earthbound, but that's mostly because Earthbound's story is, well, it's mental, but in a good way. So apart from the combat and the story, why else do I love this game? The graphics are beautiful. Even in this day and age, where we've transitioned from 2D to 3D, and then back to 2D again, passing through 2.5D as well, there is nothing for me that is as pleasing to the eye in a video game than a game with a graphical style that suits it perfectly. And Link to the Past has that by the bucket load. The music's great too, but of course it is, because it's a Zelda game. If it didn't have sing-along melodies, then it wouldn't belong in this pantheon of well-respected and great games. Is this game perfect? No, of course not. It does have the minor gripes that I always have with older RPGs, particularly the fact that if you leave your game for a little while and come back to it, then you've got no idea what you were in the middle of, and the game doesn't easily remind you, although in some situations you do have things marked on your map, which is better than nothing. But on the whole, it's one of the best games so far I've played on the mini SNES, a fact that probably won't surprise many of you, but doesn't stop it being true nonetheless. I never owned the Mega Man games as a teen, which I know may come as a surprise being a platformer-loving person like myself, but I just never owned them, which means I've got no nostalgia for this game, a game that many say is one of the best Mega Man games and indeed one of the best platformers they've ever played. And while I wouldn't go that far, it is certainly a great game. I had played one version of this before getting the mini SNES, as I have Maverick Hunter's X on PSP, which is a remake of this game, but honestly I much prefer playing it here with the original graphics and sounds. It's easy to see why people enjoy this game. It's fast, frenetic and fun, and with a difficulty level that's not too easy, but certainly not as hard as the original Mega Man games, which are famed for being incredibly hard indeed. It makes an almost perfect run and gun platformer. There's not much more to say about it. The music is perfect for this style of game, the controls are brilliantly tight which aids the gameplay. It's a really good platformer, or run and gunner, or whatever you want to call it, and it's definitely one of the games that's going to get a decent amount of playtime on my mini SNES. Also, as a side note, I'm never likely to own the real cartridge of this, as it's pretty bloody expensive, so I'm glad I get the chance to play this on a proper SNES controller. So where do we stand on RPGs so far? We've had one that I loved, Zelda, one that I quite enjoyed, Earthshock, and one that I didn't enjoy at all, Final Fantasy III. And now I'm playing one of the most beloved RPGs ever created for the Super Nintendo. Good news, it is an action RPG, which is the type of RPG I've always preferred, so let's give it a go. Oh. Look, I played this for a bit and I've got an unpopular opinion. Isn't this just a not as good as Zelda? I mean, as an RPG, a game should be holding your attention for hours upon hours, so the game itself ought to be deep and exciting, right? The story is king in games like this, and the opening of this story did absolutely nothing for me. The gameplay may be perfectly adequate, and yes, I do prefer action RPGs to turn-based battle systems, but I'd rate this game the worst among the 4 RPGs I've played on this console so far. Final Fantasy's attempt to drop me into a world and confuse me with plot may have been too far the other way, but at least that can generate some interest. And Earthbound's plot is mad enough to entertain anyone who's written a time-travelling, parallel universe-hopping novel, available from the links below. It's only 99p on Kindle. Go on, give it a go. And even Zelda's plot, as standard as it may be, completely nails the perfect pacing. But Secret of Mana is boring and dull and not as pretty, and the music is unmemorable, and it's just not for me. Leave your hatred in the comments below. I genuinely thought that this game would age really badly. I played it loads when I was young, damaged the cartridge in a cola-based incident that we don't speak of, and then didn't touch it for 20 years. Recently I got a replacement cartridge copy, but I still couldn't quite bring myself to try it, as I was convinced it was going to be outdated and terrible. And I have never been more wrong. Yes, it's got simplistic graphics. Yes, the plot is textbook, but damn, the gameplay holds up. It may have had sequels that up the ante, but for me there is something pure and amazing about the original game. Star Fox is an amazing game, and the moment I started playing, the excitement rushed back to me. Side note, as you're watching this footage, you're probably noticing how terrible I am at the game, which is sad, but doesn't stop me from having the best possible time with it. I know this sounds stupid, and for those of you who play modern games and have never seen this before, I'm sure you're amazed at how terrible the graphics look in this modern day. But I cannot recommend this game enough. Seriously, it's such good fun. And after playing the original Star Fox, my excitement at playing this unreleased sequel reached fever pitch. I was ready to lock and load some new exciting levels and play a continuation of the game that I've literally just described as such good fun. And do you know what? I was kind of disappointed. Mechanically, it's pretty similar to the original game, as you would imagine, and you get much more choice, both of pilots and of what order to tackle levels in. But of all the levels I tried, absolutely none of them felt, well, right. It's like they hadn't been designed, or more accurately, the levels hadn't had the fine-tuning that a game gets just before release. Which makes sense, this game was almost finished before being unceremoniously cancelled, only receiving an official release now on this mini console. It's tough for me to say this, as I loved the first one so much, but maybe this should have stayed unreleased, as the levels are just so bare and uninspired. And maybe that's a byproduct of being able to pick your starting level. Maybe they get better further in. But I'll confess, I stopped playing and went back to the original game instead. Street Fighter II on the SNES was the first one-on-one fighter I had ever played, and it was a phenomenon. Me and my friends spent hour upon hour at Andy's house, the one friend who had a SNES at the time, beating the crap out of each other and moaning about how unfair it is when you get caught in Honda's 100-hand slap. But that was the original Street Fighter II, and then when I got a SNES, I was lucky enough to buy Street Fighter II Turbo. It's faster, it's better, and you can play as the bosses! Often listed as many people's favourite fighting game, this edition is perfect. Later variations of the same game felt kind of overstuffed to me, so Turbo is by far the best version of Street Fighter II. I'd replayed Street Fighter II recently on my Raspberry Pi driven arcade machine, and have been slightly downhearted by the difficulty. The arcade version is not kind to lapsed players. The advantage of picking up the SNES edition again was instantly felt, as there is a difficulty setting, allowing any and all players to face a good challenge without being instantly put off. The graphics of Street Fighter II are brilliantly stylised and always memorable, and the music is some of the best you'll ever hear on a 16-bit games console. The gameplay moves from button pushing through to skilled practice, and it's totally worth putting a little time in. Granted, the actual time you'll spend playing it in any one go is probably quite short, as completing the single player arcade mode doesn't take long each time, but it's got that definite one more go factor. And also, if you're bored with a friend, the 2-player mode is sublime. Last year I decided to revisit this game, and I approached it with excitement but also a hint of caution. It's a game I absolutely loved when I was younger, but I hadn't played it in years before picking it up again, and then I was amazed to see that it's even better than I remember. And that was before the mini SNES came out. Yes, unlike almost every other game in this video, I'd been playing Super Castlevania 4 a lot just before the mini SNES came out, as I'd bought it on Wii U Virtual Console. So the appeal for me to have it on the mini SNES was that I can play it with a proper SNES pad, the way it was meant to be played. It also meant I had to get better at the game. The advantage and disadvantage of the Wii U Virtual Console is that the save state function is available on the gamepad screen, so you can do the slightly cheating method of progression where you get past one small section and save your state before attempting the next, therefore avoiding going back to the start of a larger section when you die. And while that's great to get you through the game, I found it more satisfying playing on the mini SNES, where I had to complete each section as the designers intended, while knowing I had the emergency method of saving a state available to me if I bothered to get up and press the reset button on the unit itself. And that challenge added an extra layer of excitement to this game for me. This is one of those games that I will replay often throughout the rest of my life. It's beautiful, it's fun, it's memorable, it's just a brilliant game. Now this game I should hate. I really should. I mean, it's hard, like really hard. But unlike Contra 3, which was so hard I felt I didn't want to keep trying, Super Ghouls and Ghosts lets you improve a bit at a time as you play, slowly getting a little way further through each level, allowing you the feeling of progression, even if it's at a snail's pace. On paper there's nothing special about this game. It's a very typical platformer, quite like a slightly faster paced Castlevania but with less exploring, but for some reason it does keep drawing me back in, and I can't explain why. Apart from it being hilarious when you lose all your armour and run around in underpants. That's pretty damn funny. The graphics are okay, the music's functional, the level design's pretty good, but tight gameplay controls and a ludicrous difficulty spike are clearly the things I secretly look for in a game. Well done, Super Ghouls and Ghosts, I'm sure I'll play you again very soon. And what is there to say about this game? It's the father of a series, the birth of a genre. Before this, as hard as it may be to believe, there were no mascot kart racers whatsoever. This was the first of its kind, and what a first it was. I love the Mario Kart series, and I truly believe it gets better with every iteration. The most recent one, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe on the Switch, is so good that I can spend hours racing on it, even though I'm not particularly good at the game. So logic would dictate that this first iteration is the worst, right? Well, as much as many people, including my friend Keith, would disagree, then yes, that is the case for me. But having said that, just because a game is the worst one in a series doesn't make it a bad game, and Super Mario Kart is not by any stretch a bad game. In fact, it's a great game, especially if you've got 2 players. It takes a little while to get used to the physics and controls of this old racer, but once I'd settled in and played a few goes, it was like no time at all had passed and I was 14 again, racing like a lunatic and even enjoying the much loved battle mode. The tracks aren't complex and the game shows none of the fun tricks that its later iterations are remembered for, but who cares when the core game is this much fun? If you've got a mini SNES, this is well worth firing up. I was excited about this game, really excited. Everyone goes on about how great it is, and it is a game I cannot possibly own on my original SNES, as it never got a cartridge release in Europe. And yes, it did get a Virtual Console release on the Wii U, but I never got round to picking it up. As it is a Mario game, and large chunks of the internet will tell you it's one of the best games ever made, I put my RPG bias aside and started a new game, excited at what I would discover. And to start with, I was really into it. It's got a graphical style different to any other Mario titles, and I've always had a soft spot for isometric 3D and slower games, as the viewpoint lends itself to exploration and interaction. But pretty soon the shine wore off, and I just found it more of a meh game than the best game ever. An unpopular opinion, I'm sure, but I don't even think it's the best RPG on the mini SNES. For me, both Legend of Zelda and Earthbound beat it. So what didn't I like? Well, it comes down once again to the pointless wandering around and the turn-based combat. After playing all of these RPGs, I have decided that turn-based combat is one of my least favourite things in a game, especially when you've got no idea what difference each move makes, and when you only have a limited set of moves. And yes, I know that your moveset will increase as you carry on through the game, but I just found it boring. Maybe I was in a bad mood or just not engrossed in the story or characters. And yes, I know people tell me it gets better later on, but I'm not playing half a game to get to the good bit. This isn't a Joss Whedon TV show. So it was back to the SNES menu and opening up the next game. Full disclosure right up front, this is one of my favourite video games of all time. There was no way that I wasn't going to enjoy this. However, more than anything else, this one seemed to benefit from being on an HDMI enabled device, as the colours just popped so much more than they do on my normal SNES with its AV lead. I could spend my time here going on about the quality of this game, but I'm sure you all know that this is one of the most perfect 2D platformers of all time. It's got hours of gameplay under the hood with the huge map, and loads of secret levels and secret worlds to find as well. Interestingly, I have never 100%ed this game, and I think that with the arrival of this convenient to play, beautiful looking mini SNES version, that I will finally do it. Look, I know it's a short review, and that's because unlike most other games, I genuinely have no complaints or problems with Super Mario World. And yes, I'm sure it does objectively have some, and that my opinion is hugely based in nostalgia, but who gives a shit? I'm a retro gamer after all. Nostalgia is my bread and butter. This game. Oh my god, this game. I remember owning this when I first had a SNES and adoring it, but I've never played it since, because I gave my SNES to my brother and he traded the cartridge for sweets or lent it to someone or lost it or whatever, so I haven't played this game in over 20 years, and it is still amazing. For me, and I know it's true for a lot of other people as well, Super Metroid is the perfect Metroid game. It's got loads of exploration, a gently expanding map, a minimal plot that still keeps you interested, and the key thing is that as you obtain new skills, etc., the backtracking doesn't feel tedious, which is the hardest thing to achieve in a Metroid-style game. The combat's fluid and occurs often enough so you need to be on your toes, but doesn't ruin the atmosphere by throwing 5 million enemies at you on every screen. The music is minimal and perfect, and the entire look of this game is just beautiful. Combine that with the tight controls and the genuine excitement, and this is easily one of my favourite games on the mini SNES. I hadn't played this before, and unlike almost every other game on the console, I had no strong opinions either way. I wasn't convinced I'd like it, and I wasn't concerned I'd hate it. If you showed me a list of games on the mini SNES, then it would be the one that my eye would have been most likely to simply gloss over and ignore completely. And then when trying to remember that list later, it'd be the one that I'd always forgotten. And do you know what? That's a pretty accurate description of this game for me. If you've never played a Punch-Out game, they're third-person arcade boxing games. While I cannot speak for other entries in the series, I found Super Punch-Out to be fun but slight, lacking in any real depth or excitement. Yes, each character you fight against has different weaknesses, etc., but it just feels like it stays very true to its arcade roots and keeps the game simple. Simple games aren't bad, don't get me wrong, and I had fun playing Punch-Out, but as soon as I put it down, I'd basically forgotten that I'd played it. And if I'm honest, it's unlikely to get much more playtime, as there are many more engrossing games on the mini SNES. And now, the last game, which is definitely not the least. I do already own the Game Boy Advance version of this game, and at one point I think I had the DS Semi-Remake too, so I'm familiar with Yoshi's Island, but I do think it's much more beautiful on a large TV, rather than a tiny handheld screen. Like Super Mario World, this game has colours and a visual style that really pop on this updated console, looking nicer than it's ever looked before. It's never been more fun to run around as Yoshi, the worst babysitter in the entire world, who thinks it's fine to carry a baby on his back while trying to find his home, instead of leaving the baby in a safe place, finding the home, and then arranging for a parent or responsible adult to come and collect the baby. This game is so cute that if you could eat it, it'd taste entirely of candy floss, and it'd make you sick. I mean, there's nothing unwholesome in this game, from the way Yoshi jumps, to how he uses his tongue to eat anything, to how he poops out eggs and throws them at his enemies where they explode and... Wait, aren't eggs, as laid by any animal, for reproductive use? So does that mean Yoshi is murdering his young by using them as bullets? Or are these some kind of special attack eggs? These questions are not answered in this game, and yeah, I suspect they never will be. It's still a lot of fun though. So I know what you're thinking. Brawny, if I go out and buy a mini SNES now, what are the games I should spend most time playing? Well, to help you with that answer, I've made my top 5. Number 5, Super Metroid. Number 4, Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. Number 3, Super Castlevania 4. Number 2, Donkey Kong Country. And number 1, Super Mario World. And yes, I know many of you will wildly disagree and possibly be offended that I've left off Earthbound or Secret of Mana or Final Fantasy or Super Mario RPG and I get that. Everyone has different opinions. But you're watching Hardcore Brawnography and the opinion is mine. Thank you very much for watching my video. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please let me know what games you think are the best on the mini SNES in the comments down below. If you've enjoyed it, please do subscribe. If you want to watch others, I'll put a couple of links on there for you. I'll try and upload a bit more frequently, but we all know that I promise that and then don't deliver, so just please enjoy.